So for my first uh, food presentation for Nutrition 216, I chose to do the dish lumpia Shanghai. I went to a local Filipino restaurant called Filipino Egg Roll Express to try it because it's a traditional Filipino food that's mostly served as an appetizer that you can get basically at any Filipino restaurant or convenience store that you visit to. It's extremely common. So for the history and culture of lumpia, it's a Filipino-style spring roll, and it was first introduced to the Philippines through 9th century Chinese traders who traveled across the Philippine Sea to trade with the locals. And it's also popular throughout Indonesia and even the Netherlands because of Dutch traders who traveled the Dutch trade who traveled throughout Asia. And they brought it from the Philippines to Indonesia and even the Netherlands. And it's similar to the other varieties of spring roll throughout Asia, but has the most differences, in my opinion, to from the traditional egg roll slash spring roll. And I'll go into it a little further later on. And it's extremely common as an appetizer for both lunch and dinner in the Philippines. And for the nutrient composition, this is based off of an average serving size of 3 rolls, which are probably about like a quarter-inch diameter and 6 inches long. They're really skinny and long, and they're 105 calories, 4 grams of fat, 6 grams of protein, 10 grams of carbs. They're really not too filling. They're really, like I said, really small. That's why they're mostly used as an appetizer. They have it took me I think 9 for me to be filled up. So you have to eat a lot of them in order to be fully appetized. And for the relationship to disease, in developed nations, pork liver is the top food-based transmitter of hepatitis E, a virus that infects 20 million people each year and can lead to acute illness, enlarged liver, and sometimes liver failure and death. Uh, in the Philippines, you're not really, well, in America, you wouldn't really have to worry about this, but in the Philippines, they just use they just use every part of the pork, and there's no guarantee that it's going to be fresh or fully cooked or a good part of the pig in order for you to. That's like actually good for you to eat. Like when I visited the Philippines about 5 years ago, every meal we had to make sure that all of the food was brought from a like good distributor, that a good trustworthy distributor, or it was locally grown by like family members we trusted, just so that we didn't come back with any disease or like fatigue or fever or anything like that. We wanted our health was our main priority, and that was the largest scare for eating Filipino food, I guess. And for the ingredients, the main ingredient is pork, and it's almost always going to be fresh, like I said, in America, just because there's so much pork produced in the U.S. But like I said, in third world countries like the Philippines, there's no way to guarantee that it's fresh or that you're going to get a good cut of meat that's actually meant to be eaten, because they use every single part of the pig and make sure that no part of it is wasted, just because of how difficult it is for the people of the Philippines or other third world countries can be for them to get any sort of food source. And for the agriculture, it's available year round because it's made with mostly egg batter and pork, which can be harvested throughout the entire year just through farms and farming and like just mass slaughtering, I guess, of pigs, which happens throughout all of the U.S. And for the preparation, it's prepared by frying a lumpia wrapper, which is made of egg batter, and then after it's fried, you wrap both pork and whatever vegetables you would like, which are typically almost always going to be carrots or small chunks of carrots. Sometimes they'll put lettuce or basically anything cut up really small just because of how thin they are. And then you lay it out onto the wrappers and you roll them up into long, thin rolls, and you fry them again. and you can cut them into smaller sections if you would like before frying them, just so it's easier for people to eat. And they're served with a sauce, which is normally sweet and sour or sweet chili, but you can serve with anything from teriyaki to soy sauce, or even uh, salt and vinegar is often used with it. And for its taste, I have tried multiple, like a lot of Filipino dishes, but I guess I've never really tried lumpia, mostly because my family always made spring rolls, the Chinese spring rolls for our family gatherings. And even when I went to the Philippines, we didn't try it just because we wanted to try the more exotic foods that we aren't really available here. But when I came here, I won a little taste of home, and I went to a little restaurant like called Filipino Egg Roll Express. It's really good. I'd recommend going. And it was very shocking to see how well the food tasted. It was, although it looks a lot like a egg roll, I expected it to taste a lot like a egg roll. It was honestly very different. They're a lot because they're so skinny. They can hold in the juices of the pork better, and it holds that flavor in. And it's just so much more of a explosion of flavor when you bite into it, and there's just like juice. It's just tastes infinitely times better than typical egg roll or spring roll. And uh, yeah, I'd choose it over a spring roll any day of the week, and it's just so much of a richer taste. Just and it's a always they're more crispy than your typical egg roll, and yeah. And this is a picture of this is what I tried. They they're just like longer egg rolls, but they taste completely different, and I would 100% recommend them to anyone who is willing to travel. I think it's like a 10-minute drive from campus to that little Filipino restaurant, and they're very inexpensive. Each one is about $1.25, so you can eat for very cheap by eating this meal. And like I said, I've tried a lot of other Filipino dishes before. I never had lumpia just because my family liked the spring rolls better. But I never. My family always made that decision for me. I never did. And every family gathering, we had loads of Filipino food, but lumpia was just never on the table. So I went into it expecting to be really similar to spring rolls, but honestly, completely different. Looks can be very deceiving, and it's just crispier, richer in flavor. But I would have to say that egg rolls are much more filling just because of their thicker nature. And yeah, and that's about it. Thank you.